This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Sue Herrera.
Stocks surge, a solid jobs report, and the potential for further stimulus from the European Central Bank sent the major indices up more than 2%. Speedy delivery. Amazon is buying thousands of trucks, taking on some of the biggest names in transportation to get packages to your doorstep fast. Puppy love. Meet the entrepreneur who left Wall Street, had a bright idea, and created a successful business pampering pets. All that and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Friday, December 4th. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sue Herrera. Tyler Matheson is off tonight. American businesses are hiring. The U.S. economy recorded another month of strong job growth. Non-farm payrolls for November increased 211,000, while the unemployment rate remained steady at 5%. Even wages are showing signs of picking up. Job growth numbers for September and October were also revised upwards, increasing the monthly average to 218,000 for the last 3 months. And investors like what they saw, but they also like what they heard from ECB President Mario Draghi, who said the bank was open to further stimulus. That sent the market surging. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 369 points to 17,847. The Nasdaq gained 104. The S&P 500 rose 42, its biggest gain in 3 months. Hampton Pearson has more on today's solid jobs numbers.
Led by big gains at good-paying housing construction jobs, employers delivered another solid month of hiring in November. More Americans looking for jobs and finding them even helped boost the labor force participation rate.
The strength of the participation rate and the strength of the average over time at 218, I think was the number. That means that in the future, wages are rising.
Eating and drinking places continue to be engines of job growth, adding 32,000 new employees last month and more than 374,000 over the year.
Does that make it worse?
Second only to healthcare. In Arlington, Virginia, Texas Jack's is part of the restaurant boom in this upscale neighborhood just across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. The owner says there were hundreds of applicants for the 60 workers he plans to hire. The real challenge was finding qualified workers.
Not enough qualified people that had relevant experience, for us. A lot of young, people looking for work, but just really no experience that was relevant to us.
Among the new hires, Clay Hollenkamp. What he'll make here as a manager will allow him to stop juggling several part-time jobs.
This job at Texas Jack's definitely pays a little bit more than my last job. And it pays me enough to where I can afford to have just one job as opposed to having several jobs, which is I had before was several. So that's nice.
Elsewhere, low oil prices and weak growth overseas triggered job losses among oil drillers, the mining industry, and manufacturing. News today of a widening trade deficit with exports at a 3-year low won't help reverse those trends. Construction and infrastructure jobs could get an even bigger boost now that Congress has passed a new 5-year, $300 billion highway bill. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Hampton Pearson in Washington.
And so, will the labor market stay on track? Josh Feinman joins us now with more analysis on the labor market and what it will mean for the Fed. He is chief economist at Deutsche Asset and Wealth Management. Good to see you again, Josh.
Good to be here, Sue.
The market seemed to like the report, certainly. Did you find any fault with it at all?
Not really. I think it was a pretty solid report. Suggests good momentum in the economy and the labor market, and that the healing in labor market conditions that's been going on for a number of years seems to be continuing. So good broad-based hiring and good momentum.
There also seemed to be a little bit of wage growth, which I'm sure the Fed is watching very carefully because they're looking for a little inflation to creep in here.
Absolutely, yes. We're starting to see some early signs of that. I mean, it's it's still pretty tentative. It's still small, but the arrow seems to be pointing in the right direction. You're absolutely right. That's certainly what the Fed is looking for because We're going to need to see wages pick up to a somewhat higher rate of growth and sustain that to get inflation back up to the Fed's target. I think the Fed feels that that will happen as the labor market continues to heal, and these early signs of it are certainly encouraging.
So are you one that falls into the camp that with this latest report, with that creep up in wages, that we are looking in a couple of weeks' time at the first move on interest rates by the Fed?
Yes, I think we are. I think it's been signaled pretty clearly from the Fed. The data corroborate that, and it's ironically it'll be almost the 7th anniversary of the zero interest rate policy. But I think that there's enough positive signs in the economy to make the Fed feel that we can finally lift up from zero. But I think they'll also remind us that the trajectory of rate increases beyond that, while obviously dependent on how the economy performs, are probably going to be pretty shallow.
One of the issues has been in the past the participation rate, the number of workers who were looking for jobs, participating in the workforce. That seems to be healing a little bit, for lack of a better word.
A little bit. I mean, keep in mind we have two trends here, right? We have the demographic effect. The aging population, the retirement of the baby boomers, that puts downward pressure on the participation rate. That's going to continue. But you also have this cyclical piece, which is if job opportunities, improve, it might lure some more people back in. So, these two forces kind of moving in opposite directions. At least in the most recent month, it looked like the latter force won out and participation picked up a little bit.
All right, Josh, thank you. Have a great weekend. Good to see you again.
Thanks.
Josh Feinman with Deutsche Asset and Wealth Management. The world's largest oil producers decided to keep pumping at current production levels despite the glut of crude worldwide. That sent the price of oil nearly 3% lower to settle back below $40 a barrel. Steve Sedgwick reports from the OPEC meeting in Vienna.
It's been an extraordinary day in Vienna at the OPEC meeting of oil ministers. I spoke to a whole host of them, and I'm not sure any of them are happy with the outcome. Before today, there was an official production level of 30 million barrels a day, with a de facto real level of 31.5 million barrels a day. Now, and in the OPEC communique, there is no mention of what the real level is from now on. They said we will just continue the current policy, we will produce what we're producing, we will monitor events, and we hope for more dialogue with non-OPEC members as well. And that's a metaphor for the fact that they have been unable to get a deal with Russia and other non-OPEC producers to cut production and stabilize price. Whether that means prices continue to fall in the oil market remain to be seen, but it does mean somewhat of a free-for-all for the OPEC members, who can now pretty much produce what they like and not have to stick to any form of quota. The OPEC president did say to me that they've got a meeting in June 2016, but it was highly possible if prices fell that they would have to have another meeting before then. But certainly an historic day here in Vienna, as OPEC just almost gives up the ghost on sticking to any form of production level. This is Steve Sedgwick for Nightly Business Report in Vienna.
New developments in San Bernardino, California, where the FBI is now investigating the shootings as an act of terror. Jane Wells is there with the details for us this evening. Good evening, Jane.
Hi, Sue. Here 2 days after the slaughter, this street is still closed off. So is the building. People have not been able to come get their cars, which have been parked there since Wednesday morning. A day of a whole lot of news coming out as the FBI officially takes control of this investigation for this reason.
We are now investigating these horrific acts as an act of terrorism.
The two terrorists, Syed Farouk and his wife Tashfeen Malik, had an arsenal of weapons and ammunition, and shortly before they murdered 14 people, police say, and Facebook confirms, Malik posted on Facebook her allegiance to the leader of ISIS, but were they directed by ISIS or merely inspired by it?
So far, we have no indication that these killers are part of an organized larger group or form part of a cell. There's no indication that they are part of a network.
Reporters like NBC's Carrie Sanders got inside the couple's home today, once it had been cleared by the FBI. But in the home, investigators say they found a veritable bomb-making factory and evidence that the suspects tried to destroy, including 2 crushed cell phones, which the FBI says it still hopes to be able to extract data from. The government of Pakistan, where Tashfeen Malik was born and where she was reportedly studying to be a pharmacist, has expressed its condolences and is helping U.S. investigators. And we now know the names of all 14 who died. 8 men, 6 women. The oldest was 60, the youngest 26 years old. Authorities say there are currently no more credible threats, no gunmen, no more suspects under arrest, at least for now. And Sue, right now, on this same day, in another part of Southern California, they are having a funeral for Noemi Gonzalez, the Cal State Long Beach student who was murdered in the Paris terror attacks. Back to you.
Yeah, it's been a very tough couple of weeks, Jane. Jane, thank you very much. Jane Wells in San Bernardino, California. So still ahead, with the FBI now investigating the mass shootings as an act of terror, why did stocks soar today? We'll talk about that, but first a look at the performance of the major indexes this week. "2015 is the biggest year for mergers ever. According to Dealogic, a number of smaller takeovers announced this week pushed global M&A volume to $4.3 trillion. The previous record occurred back in 2007. All right, let's turn to our market monitor tonight for more on today's stock market rally and the stocks that he's recommending to investors. This is his first time joining us on the program. His name is Peter Tews. He is president of the Chase Investment Council. Welcome, Peter. Nice to have you here.
Hi, Sue. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You know, it's such a curious day because we've had so much volatility in the stock market, yet we had this link to terror in the San Bernardino shootings this week, and we had a very, very strong rally in stocks. To a lot of people, that doesn't make sense. What do you think?
It doesn't make sense. You're right. You got to remember today's market pretty much offset the drop we had yesterday. And while the shootings in San Bernardino are terrible and a tragic event, and our hearts go out to everybody affected, I think until there's a pattern, it's viewed as a one-off event, and the market seems to look past it at what the economy is going to do.
Let's talk about your investment strategy. You're a growth investor, so you're looking for companies and stocks with earnings growth and the ability to deploy cash. Martin Marietta Materials is on the list. Why do you like that particular stock?
Well, as your reporter mentioned a few minutes ago, Congress just approved a massive infrastructure bill that will spend billions on highway construction throughout the United States. Martin Marietta Materials is one of the key beneficiaries of that highway building. They should have 50% earnings growth between this year and next year, and is selling for 20 times earnings. In addition, they have a massive share repurchase plan to take their own internally generated capital and buy back roughly 20% of their outstanding shares.
Next, it's to the home front, home builders in particular, NVR Incorporated. Why do you like it?
Yeah, NVR is a company based in Reston, Virginia, does probably 50% of its business in Northern Virginia and the Maryland area. And, you know, housing is in a sweet spot of a cycle, we think, for the next 2 or 3 years, even with a small rate hike in the next couple of weeks. The company delivered about 3,700 homes in the past quarter, has a backlog of 7,000, 8,000 homes to deliver over the next 6 months or so. So we think you're going to get, again, very good earnings growth for the company, and it's selling for a reasonable price.
All right, very quickly, Blackhawk Network Holdings.
Yeah, gift cards. Go into your grocery store and look at the rack of iTunes cards, Amazon cards, Home Depot cards, and Bass Pro Shop cards. and that's Blackhawk for you, and I think they're the Christmas gift of choice for many people these days.
All right, Peter, nice to have you with us. We'll have you back very soon. Peter Tews with Chase Investment Council. Some more bad E. coli news for Chipotle, and that is where we begin tonight's market focus. The chain said the recent outbreak will cut deeply into its sales and earnings for the current quarter. This, as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the outbreak has expanded to 9 states with a total of 52 reported illnesses. The shares plunged initially after the close. During the regular session, shares fell just a fraction to $561.20. Norfolk Southern rejected an unsolicited $28 billion takeover offer by Canadian Pacific. Norfolk says that the bid undervalues its firm and the chances of achieving regulatory approval is too low. Norfolk Southern fell 1% to $92.05. Canadian Pacific fell 4.5% to $134.49. An update now on that Avon report we told you about last night. The cosmetics company responded to the activist Barrington Capital after that firm launched a public campaign against Avon to turn its business around. Avon pointed to actions that it has taken to drive growth. The shares were nearly 6% higher to $4.22. Amgen and Merck are teaming up to conduct 2 clinical trials. The tests will evaluate a class of drugs that uses the body's immune system to fight cancer. Amgen rose more than 4% to $161.43. Merck was 2% higher to $53.64. Well, forget drones, for now anyway. Amazon wants to deliver your packages the old-fashioned way, by truck. But they won't be using any old trucking company to get your packages where they need to go. Morgan Brennan takes a look at the company's new venture into the delivery game.
Amazon is going the extra mile, unveiling its new trucking fleet at an event in Chicago earlier today. A fleet of thousands of branded semi-trucks that will be used to haul goods between the e-commerce giant's warehouses, fulfillment centers, and sorting hubs. The trailers or containers attached to the vehicles will be owned by Amazon and transported by third-party operators that own their own tractors. The trucks will deliver orders around the country, and Amazon says it's doing this to help fulfill demand, since package volumes are, quote, increasing dramatically. It's the latest step in Amazon's quest to control its supply chain and build out its own transportation network, a strategy meant to help rein in costs, which grew 31% last year and outpaced revenue. Analysts say this is especially true during the peak holiday season.
By having its own fleet, you can make the trucks go from where you want them to where you want them, paying just the cost of the truck and the driver, and not necessarily having to pay a market premium to have availability of trucks around the holidays especially.
The company has been experimenting with everything from its own same-day deliveries to drones. A lot of focus on the so-called last mile. But analysts say this initiative addresses another piece of the process, similar to those branded big rigs you see on the highway for retailers like Walmart.
If you look at what their annual sales are, they're approaching $110 billion this year. Walmart's $550 billion. Walmart has 6,000 trucks. At times has had more than that. Large retailers tend to build out their own distribution infrastructure, or at least part of it.
This could impact major trucking fleets like Werner Enterprises, Covenant Transportation, Swift Transportation, and J.B. Hunt. But what it will not change is how individual packages ultimately end up on doorsteps. That will continue to be done, at least for now, by UPS, FedEx, and the U.S. Postal Service, which actually handles about 70% of those volumes. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Morgan Brennan.
From Amazon to the #1 seller of Christmas trees in the country, Home Depot. And this weekend is typically a big one for sales. Courtney Reagan reports from one of the retailer's partner farms in Jefferson, North Carolina.
Christmas is a year-round business for the 4 generations of the Sexton family. More than 1.5 million Christmas trees are grown on their 2,000-acre North Carolina farm.
We have to shear the trees every year, and we have to clip the tops one by one, no machines or anything. It's all by hand.
Sexton Farms is one of the roughly 24 family-owned American farms supplying Christmas trees to Home Depot, a 20-plus year business relationship. According to the National Christmas Tree Association, Americans bought more than 26 million live trees last year, twice the number of artificial ones, and more are bought at chain retailers like Home Depot and Lowe's than anywhere else.
We're the #1 seller of Christmas trees in the country. Last year we sold about 2.8 million trees, which is a lot of trees, and we expect to surpass 3 million trees this year.
It takes just 2 days or less between the time that the trees are harvested here at Sexton Farms in the Blue Ridge Mountains before they're for sale in Home Depot stores between North Carolina and South Florida. And live Christmas trees are just part of Home Depot's quest to capitalize on all things festive. In the past decade, its holiday merchandise assortment has grown 5-fold to more than 4,500 products. And while Home Depot's big season is the spring, holiday merchandise is critical to success in the fourth quarter.
In 2014, for example, we outpaced the company's fourth quarter comps. We can move the needle for the entire company in terms of sales and profit.
A holiday wish Home Depot is pining for this season, too. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Courtney Reagan in Jefferson, North Carolina.
Coming up, meet the former power attorney who took her love of pets and found a successful second career. It's this month's Bright Idea, next. Here's a look at what to watch for next week. A read of inflation with the Producer Price Index. We'll have the retail sales report from November. And also on the data front, the Consumer Sentiment Report is out. And that is what to watch for next week. The American Pet Products Association projects overall spending in the industry to top $60 billion this year. And the fastest growing segment within the industry is pet services like boarding and grooming. But as Tyler Matheson tells us, it was more out of a love for dogs than money that one former lawyer got the bright idea to buy a doggy daycare center that was getting a little rough around the edges.
Who's happy to go to work? You are.
It's not unusual to find a dog at the office these days, but Tanya Eisenstein's story is hardly the norm. A lifelong dog lover and career lawyer, Eisenstein gave up a high-paying job at Goldman Sachs, well into six figures, to buy Camp Canine, a doggy daycare center, back in 2012. Sounds crazy, right?
All my friends looked at me and said that. My parents looked at me and said that. Everybody I knew thought I was pretty nuts for doing this.
Before Eisenstein bought it, the business had become, well, dog-eared. It was in a steep decline.
I'll admit, I didn't read the Yelp reviews of this place before I took it over. And when I read them afterwards, I was horrified.
To fix it, she aimed to offer the best possible customer service, but training and retaining the kind of employees who can learn things like how to recognize when a dog needs help, well, it's no easy task.
Hi. So as per usual, she played all day long.
The one thing Eisenstein changed is the starting pay, now a couple of bucks above the minimum wage.
This is not a minimum wage job. You're caring for living beings, right? If you care about your employees, I find that they care back and they will care more about your business as well.
Eisenstein says it's a small price to pay for the kind of love her staff gives, from food prep to high-end grooming, even one-on-one walks in Central Park, sometimes ending with a hot dog snack. And the business has turned around, going from about 40 dogs a day to 100. The staff has grown from 8 to 35, and revenues have doubled in 3 years to well over $1 million a year. The dogs get room to run inside a generous for Manhattan 5,000 square foot rental space. She's put about $250,000 into renovations since she took over.
The floor alone is approximately $75,000.
Companies like Camp Bow Wow and Dogtopia have built multi-million-dollar businesses with hundreds of franchises. But Eisenstein says that's not for her.
Franchising, to me, it takes the love out of it. You know, I spent a long time in a career that I did not love, and this means a lot to me, and I don't want to sell it out.
Being on Manhattan's affluent, dog-rich Upper West Side hasn't hurt either. Eisenstein counts entertainer Bernadette Peters among her all-star clientele. There was even a guest spot on TV doing makeovers for rescue dogs, a pet project of sorts. One of Eisenstein's dogs, Nacho, is a rescue. So far, about 75 rescue animals have made a foster home stop at Camp Canine before being adopted.
This is Roper. He's available for adoption now.
It's a passion play, paying off in more ways than one.
When you take a foster, you free up a spot in a shelter, and so you're saving dogs' lives. And people come back here with those dogs. So, you know, I just tried to do a good thing. It actually turned out to be good for business.
And Camp Canine recently added cat care to its roster of services, looking to differentiate itself from the crowd that has become a very competitive field. And that does it for Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Sue Herrera, and we want to remind you, this is the time of year your public television station seeks your support. And we thank you for that support. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday.